Have you ever witnessed a moment so shocking that it felt like time froze? Picture this. A bustling airport gate filled with tired passengers, some clutching their boarding passes, others anxiously checking their phones. Suddenly, a flight attendant marches up to a well-dressed black man standing quietly in line, rips his ticket in half, and snaps, "You don't belong here!" Stunned silence blankets the terminal. Little does this flight attendant know that the man whose boarding pass she's just destroyed is none other than the new CEO of the entire airline. Buckle up, this story will take you on a bumpy ride of twists, turns, and ultimate karmic justice. The day started like any other at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the world's busiest airport, teeming with crowds from dawn till midnight. Commuters hustled toward gates, business travelers lugged briefcases, and families wrangled children and suitcases. Beneath the constant announcements reverberating through the corridors, there was that familiar hum of excitement mixed with stress. The lines at security checkpoints seemed endless. People were on high alert because Atlanta's morning rush left little room for delay. One missed connection could ruin an entire trip. Among these throngs of travelers was Kevin Marshall, a distinguished yet unassuming black man in his early 50s. Dressed in a crisp navy blue suit, he blended in with the rest of the corporate crowd. A well-worn leather carry-on slung over his shoulder testified to a lifetime of business travel. Kevin moved with a quiet confidence, occasionally checking his watch, but showing no signs of panic or haste. He was headed to an important meeting in New York, one that, ironically, could shape the future of the very airline he was flying with. Standing nearby at gate A22 was flight attendant Monica Reynolds. Known among her colleagues for her outspoken personality, Monica prided herself on enforcing rules. She had no idea that the man she was about to confront was actually the new CEO of the airline. Nor did she suspect that her single impulsive act, one of blatant disrespect, would soon rock not just the gate, but the entire company. Kevin had chosen this flight for a reason. Incognito travel allowed him to observe the airline's operations without the filters and curated tours typical for visiting executives. While he had introduced himself to the upper management a few weeks earlier, he had explicitly asked them to keep his presence low-key, even from frontline staff. Kevin wanted an unvarnished look at how passengers were treated, especially under stressful conditions. This was a strategy he had employed before at another major company he once led. Observing team members in their natural environment, free from the pressures of a VIP visit, often revealed truths that scripted meetings never could. Meanwhile, Monica Reynolds was already in a foul mood. Her shift had started at an ungodly hour, and she'd been dealing with multiple passenger complaints about delayed flights, missing luggage, and seat assignments gone awry. She prided herself on being a stickler for rules. Company policy is my compass, she liked to say. Yet, beneath her authoritative demeanor, Monica often harbored a short fuse when it came to people who she felt challenged her. As Kevin approached the gate, he overheard Monica raising her voice at an elderly couple who struggled with their boarding passes. Something about her tone made him pause. He decided to linger for a moment before stepping into line. The tension in Monica's voice wasn't just stress. It carried a particular edge that Kevin, a keen observer of human behavior, recognized as condescension. Little did Monica know her attitude that day would be etched into the company's history. Monica waved the elderly couple away, practically tossing their documents back at them once she deemed them acceptable. Kevin could sense the embarrassment radiating from the couple, who exchanged worried glances. Feeling a pang of empathy, he stepped forward, intending to offer assistance or at least a comforting word. But when the couple turned and saw his kind expression, they simply gave him a grateful nod and continued onward. With the couple gone, Kevin found himself face to face with Monica. He handed her his boarding pass with the same composed demeanor he'd shown all morning. However, Monica was already on edge, and Kevin's calmness seemed to inflame her further. She glanced at his boarding pass first class and then eyed him from head to toe. Kevin watched her expression morph from mild irritation to something bordering on disbelief. He wondered if she recognized his name, but Monica gave no sign of connecting him to the new CEO. Instead, she muttered, "That can't be right," and began rapidly typing on her computer. "What seems to be the issue?" Kevin asked politely. "Sir," she said in a clipped tone, "I think you might be at the wrong gate." She held the ticket suspiciously, as though it were counterfeit. Kevin raised an eyebrow. "I'm pretty sure I'm at the right gate for flight 223 to New York." Monica pursed her lips, her posture stiffening. "That's a first-class seat," she stated, voice tinged with unspoken insinuation. Kevin felt a chill run down his spine, the all-too-familiar tension that can creep in when a situation hints at racial bias. He'd navigated corporate boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations for decades, developing a thick skin against subtle and sometimes blatant discrimination. His tactic was always to remain composed. He leaned forward, speaking softly so as not to draw attention from the gathering crowd. "Yes, it is a first-class seat, and it should be correct. If there's any confusion, I can wait while you verify my reservation." Monica's face hardened. Behind her was a growing line of passengers, some of whom shifted uncomfortably as they watched the exchange. A few shot sympathetic glances toward Kevin. Others seemed impatient, rolling their eyes at what they assumed was just another boarding delay. Monica looked back at her screen, then at Kevin's boarding pass. Her jaw tightened as though she was bracing for a confrontation. "I see a note here about a special passenger, but the name doesn't match. Must be a glitch in the system." Kevin considered that the special passenger note might indeed be referencing him. However, as part of his incognito approach, his ticket was deliberately booked under a slightly adjusted name, K. Marshall, to keep a low profile. He weighed whether to reveal his true identity right then, but decided to wait. It was crucial to see this scenario through, though he had no idea just how far Monica would take her hostility. Without warning, Monica snapped. Perhaps the stress of the day was boiling over. Perhaps she had personal prejudices lurking beneath her professional veneer. Whatever the case, her next action shocked everyone around. She took Kevin's boarding pass in both hands and tore it clean in half. "There's no way you're in first class," she snarled, tossing the torn pieces onto the gate desk. "I've had enough of people trying to cheat the system. Sir, step aside and let real ticket holders board." An incredulous hush fell over the gate area. One passenger gasped audibly. Another whispered, "Did she just?" Kevin stood there, stunned but resolute. A part of him wanted to flash his ID badge from corporate headquarters right then and there. Another part, the part that had faced discrimination before, told him to handle this carefully, both for the sake of setting an example and for collecting the unfiltered truth about his employees' behavior. He glanced at the torn ticket on the desk and then back at Monica. "I believe that was a valid boarding pass," he said quietly, his voice trembling with controlled emotion. "You just destroyed it." Monica didn't flinch. "Security!" she yelled over her shoulder. "We have a situation here." As if on cue, a security officer appeared. He was a tall man with a calm demeanor named Victor Collins. Seeing the heated exchange, Victor raised a hand to diffuse tensions before they escalated further. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing between Kevin and Monica. Monica pointed an accusatory finger. "This passenger is claiming a first-class seat that isn't his. I have reason to believe he's attempting to board with a fraudulent ticket." Victor looked at Kevin and then at the torn ticket scraps on the desk. He sighed, sensing that the situation was more complicated than Monica was letting on. "Sir, can I see another form of identification or perhaps the reservation details on your phone?" Victor asked politely. Kevin exhaled slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket for his smartphone. Meanwhile, he couldn't help but notice how the other passengers were gawking phones, now raised to record video, faces riddled with shock or curiosity. He understood that in the age of social media, this entire fiasco could go viral within minutes. He unlocked his phone and pulled up his booking confirmation email. "Here it is," he said, offering the screen to Victor. "Flight 223, departing at 9:30 am, first class seat 4A, under the name K. Marshall." Victor studied the screen, his expression morphing from concern to confusion. He looked at Monica. "It seems valid," he said carefully. "Let's see if we can print a new ticket." Monica bristled, as Victor suggested simply reissuing a boarding pass. It was as if she couldn't stand being challenged in front of the passengers. Her authority in her mind was absolute. Stubbornly, she slammed her hand on the desk. "I'm telling you, this passenger does not have the right to be in first class. The system must be mistaken." For a fleeting moment, Kevin considered revealing his position at the airline, but he hesitated, remembering all the times he'd faced prejudice or discrimination. Would making a big scene about his title actually solve anything? He wanted to hold Monica accountable, but also see how the rest of the airline staff would handle the matter. Passengers around them began murmuring amongst themselves. One woman in line stepped forward, brandishing her phone. "I recorded what happened," she said, looking at Kevin sympathetically. "If you need evidence for a complaint or lawsuit, you have it here." Monica shot the woman a venomous look. "I suggest you put your phone away, ma'am. This is a private matter." The woman shook her head. "Not anymore. You destroyed his ticket in front of everyone." Kevin remained calm, though his pulse raced. If he escalated this to a public spat, it could overshadow the broader issue he needed to address: systematic problems in customer service. Little did Monica know, she had just ripped up her own career prospects along with his boarding pass. "Let's step away from the gate area," Victor suggested, eyeing the growing crowd. He motioned to Monica and Kevin to follow him to a nearby alcove, away from the line. Kevin complied, though he cast a regretful glance at the passengers still waiting to board. He didn't want to cause further delays for innocent bystanders. Monica, however, refused to budge. "I'm staying here. I have a flight to board, and I won't let him on." Victor gave her a firm look. "Monica, you've torn up his ticket. We at least need to discuss this with a supervisor. If there's a misunderstanding, we should clear it up." Kevin took a measured breath. "I'd appreciate that. I have all the necessary details on my phone." Monica huffed, crossing her arms. "Fine, get a supervisor, but I'm telling you, this man is not flying on my plane in first class, not on my watch." The hostility in her voice was palpable. Kevin couldn't help but wonder how many other passengers had faced similar treatment, perhaps with less dramatic outcomes, under Monica's watch. There was a system in place to review passenger complaints, but how many times had employees like Monica slipped under the radar? Victor radioed for a gate supervisor, who promised to arrive shortly. In the interim, the tension around Gate A22 only increased. People whispered, pointed, and filmed. Kevin stood off to the side, determined to remain calm but now acutely aware that his plan to travel incognito had erupted into a fiasco that the entire airline, and possibly the world, might soon hear about. A sharp-eyed gate supervisor named Angela Klein soon arrived. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes but a no-nonsense approach. Immediately sensing the tension in the air, Angela ushered Kevin, Monica, and Victor into a small office near the gate area. "All right, let's settle this," Angela said, shutting the door behind her. "Monica, tell me your side." Monica gestured wildly. He showed up claiming a first-class seat. The system clearly glitched. "I have a gut feeling that he's not supposed to be there. So I did what I had to do to protect the airline." Angela raised an eyebrow. And that required tearing up the ticket? Monica folded her arms. I'm a loyal employee. I won't let someone get away with fraud. Angela sighed and turned to Kevin. Sir, may I have your name and see your documentation again? Kevin Marshall, he replied, calmly presenting his phone once more. I'm booked under K. Marshall. The seat is 4A paid in full. I also have loyalty status with this airline, which should be in the system. Angela typed on a computer console in the corner. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Your seat is indeed booked. I see no signs of fraudulent activity. She glanced at Monica. This is a legitimate booking, Monica. Monica's face contorted, but Angela pressed on. I'll issue you a new boarding pass. Mr. Marshall, I apologize for the inconvenience. Kevin paused, collecting himself. Thank you. But before we proceed, there's something else you should know. Angela looked at him quizzically. Monica tapped her foot impatiently. Victor, standing to the side, was the picture of professional calm, but Kevin sensed that even he was anxious to see how this would unfold. I'm the new CEO, Kevin said simply, his gaze shifting between Angela and Monica. I requested an incognito booking to observe how operations are run from a customer's perspective. Angela froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Monica's eyes went wide for a split second, then narrowed. For a moment, disbelief took hold of the room. Angela cleared her throat, trying to regain composure. You're Kevin Marshall? The Kevin Marshall? I thought you'd introduced yourself to corporate last week. I did, Kevin replied, but only to the executive team. I asked them not to circulate my image widely so I could evaluate ground-level experiences without special treatment. Monica burst out with a nervous laugh, unable to accept what she was hearing. No way, she muttered, shaking her head. You're lying. We have a CEO already. Angela rubbed her temples. No, Monica, we just hired Mr. Marshall from an outside firm. The official internal announcement was emailed out, but not everyone reads those quickly, I suppose. Suddenly, the gravity of the situation dawned on Monica, and her stubborn defiance faltered. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Angela sighed deeply, sensing the unraveling storm that was about to descend upon her staff member. Outside the small office, the final boarding call for flight 223 echoed through the corridor. Passengers were still lining up, some anxious, some annoyed by the delay. Angela glanced at the clock, aware that they were minutes away from closing the boarding gate. Kevin stepped back, offering a way forward. I do need to get on that flight. I have important meetings in New York. But before that, I want to know how you plan to address what just happened here. Angela's posture straightened. Mr. Marshall, as CEO, you have every right to demand immediate action. However, might I suggest we handle the flight first? We can address the disciplinary measures later. Kevin gave a polite nod. That's fair. Let's ensure the passengers aren't delayed because of this. Monica, pale and shaking, looked as though she wanted to disappear. It was dawning on her that she'd just not only committed a severe violation of company policy, but had also disrespected the man leading the entire airline. No number of frantic apologies or justifications could fully erase her action. Angela reprinted Kevin's boarding pass, handing it to him with an apologetic bow of her head. Safe travels, Mr. Marshall, she said softly. We'll speak further upon your return. Kevin accepted the pass. With a measured stare, he turned to Monica. I do hope this will be a learning moment, he said quietly, voice tinged with the disappointment of a leader who just witnessed a fundamental breach of customer care. Monica stood speechless, aware that the consequences of her impulsive action would be far-reaching. The hallway outside felt suddenly cooler, the airport's air conditioning system providing a stark contrast to the heated confrontation in the office. Kevin walked briskly back to Gate A22, where Victor, the security officer, was managing the last stragglers. Passengers who had witnessed the incident peered curiously at Kevin, some even offering thumbs up or hushed words of support as he passed by. Kevin boarded the plane without further incident. Settling into seat 4A, a wide, plush first-class seat, he let out a long exhale. He'd traveled for decades in every class of service, from cramped coach seats in the early days of his career to lavish first-class cabins during his executive tenure. But never had he felt so uneasy sitting in first class. As the plane's cabin filled with the usual pre-departure chatter, Kevin's mind swirled with questions. If this is how one flight attendant behaves, how many others follow the same approach to customer service? How many customers have experienced injustice but lacked the recourse he had, being the CEO? A sense of responsibility weighed heavily on him. He had to address not only Monica's unacceptable behavior, but also any cultural or systemic issues that might allow such treatment to persist. The next few days would be pivotal in shaping how he would lead this airline and whether the employees would truly embrace or resist change. Up in the flight deck, Captain William Gardner and First Officer Lucia Ramirez were preparing for takeoff. The last passenger had boarded, the doors were shut, and the jet bridge had pulled away. The flight attendants minus Monica, who was replaced last minute by a reserve crew member after the fiasco, were securing overhead bins and taking final seat checks. Kevin couldn't help but notice the hushed tone among the cabin crew. Word spreads fast in airline operations, and the rumor that the new CEO had faced an altercation at the gate was likely making the rounds. The flight attendant, who now worked the first-class cabin, introduced herself politely as Dana. She maintained a professional demeanor, but Kevin saw flickers of curiosity in her eyes, as though she knew exactly who he was. Still, she treated him with the standard courtesy afforded any first-class passenger, no extra frills or fuss. As the plane pushed back from the gate, Kevin mentally composed an agenda for his upcoming meetings in New York, but inevitably his thoughts circled back to the incident. He considered the possibility of quietly resolving the matter with HR, a stern warning for Monica, a review of policies, and some mandatory sensitivity training. But something gnawed at him. Was a simple disciplinary slap on the wrist enough to address the deep-seated issues that led Monica to behave in such a manner? The engines roared, and the aircraft began its takeoff roll. Kevin felt the familiar, exhilarating surge as the plane climbed into the sky. What lay ahead was not just a meeting in New York, but a pivotal crossroads for the airline's leadership and culture. During the climb, Kevin sipped a glass of water, ignoring the usual complimentary champagne offered in first class. He needed to keep his mind clear. After reaching cruising altitude, he pulled out his laptop, intending to prepare for his board presentation. However, instead of focusing on revenue projections and cost-saving measures, he found himself drafting an urgent memo. Subject: immediate review of customer service and employee conduct. Given recent events, it is imperative that we... He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Would a memo suffice to address the gravity of what had transpired? Probably not. This called for a more comprehensive approach, an in-person briefing with human resources, diversity and inclusion, legal and training departments. Dana came by with a gentle smile. "Mr. Marshall, can I get you anything else?" Kevin shook his head politely. "I'm fine, thanks." He saw the question in her eyes. Was he really the CEO who just got his ticket ripped up by a colleague? Yet Dana gracefully withheld any prying queries. With the seatbelt sign-off, Kevin leaned back, letting the hum of the engines envelop him. He had accepted the CEO position with grand ambitions: rebrand the airline, reimagine the customer experience, and cultivate a modern, inclusive culture. Now, day one of his incognito approach had delivered a stark reality check. Before any grand transformations, he had to ensure the basic decency of how customers were treated. Closing his eyes for a moment, Kevin reminded himself that challenges often present themselves in the most unexpected ways. He resolved to handle this swiftly and judiciously upon his return to Atlanta. Upon landing at LaGuardia Airport, Kevin was met by a discreet member of the airline's ground staff who guided him through a private exit to avoid media attention. Word had indeed begun to leak about the incident in Atlanta. Although not all the details were public, the rumor that a flight attendant had disrespected a high-ranking official, perhaps even the CEO, was swirling among staff. Kevin's schedule in New York was packed. He had back-to-back meetings with potential business partners, a discussion with a tech firm about upgrading the airline's reservation system, and a strategic session with marketing consultants. However, the memory of Monica's face and the shock of her tearing up his ticket kept intruding. During a late dinner meeting with marketing executives, the conversation drifted to brand image and corporate responsibility. Kevin carefully steered it toward the broader topic of customer-first culture, a term many airlines touted but often failed to embody. As they discussed new strategies to improve brand perception, Kevin made it clear, we're not just changing a tagline. We need a cultural shift, something that resonates from the top executive down to the newest flight attendant. The marketing team nodded enthusiastically, but Kevin knew that the real work would happen on the ground, in training rooms and break rooms, and in the hearts of employees like Monica. By the end of the night, Kevin was exhausted, but he also felt a growing resolve. The next step was to return to Atlanta and enact changes that would hopefully prevent any future Monica incidents and ensure that all customers, regardless of race or background, were treated with the respect they deserved. Back in Atlanta, the airline's corporate offices buzzed with rumors. Angela Klein, the gate supervisor, found herself fielding questions from fellow supervisors and even some higher-ups about what exactly had transpired. Meanwhile, Monica Reynolds spent several agonizing days awaiting the inevitable HR call. She replayed the incident in her mind, feeling a complex mix of shame, anger, and fear. Had she really torn up a genuine ticket? Had she really disrespected her own CEO? It all felt like a nightmare. In a corner of the HR department, a quiet but intense review began. Managers scoured Monica's employment history, previous passenger complaints, performance reports, and any existing notes on her conduct. While some documents showed that Monica had received compliments from passengers for her efficiency, a troubling number of reports indicated a pattern of rudeness and impatience. Simultaneously, the Diversity and Inclusion team launched an internal inquiry. They wanted to understand whether Monica's behavior was part of a broader trend. Surveys, interviews, and focus groups were considered to see if employees of color or even passengers of color felt systematically treated differently. All of this set the stage for Kevin's return. While he completed his obligations in New York, his leadership team prepared for the reckoning that would come. Monica's case was not just about punishing an individual. It would shine a light on the company's values or lack thereof, and serve as a critical turning point for how the airline moved forward. Early the following Monday, Kevin stepped into his new Atlanta office. He had yet to properly decorate. Boxes of personal items lay unopened in a corner. But there was no time for aesthetics now. He had called an emergency leadership meeting for 9 a.m. Around the table sat vice presidents from HR, operations, corporate communications, and legal, along with the head of diversity and inclusion. Angela Klein was also invited. The air was heavy with anticipation. Kevin wasted no time. I'm sure you're all aware of the incident at Gate at 22 involving Miss Monica Reynolds. Let's state the obvious, her behavior was completely unacceptable. That said, I want to know if this is symptomatic of a larger issue. Does anyone have data on how many passenger complaints we receive daily related to discrimination or rudeness? The head of HR cleared her throat. We get a fair share of complaints every month, but not all are well substantiated. Still, there might be a pattern worth exploring. The VP of Diversity added, anecdotally, employees of color have occasionally reported subtle biases among co-workers. We've tried to address these through training, but maybe it's time for a more robust program. Kevin nodded. I want a comprehensive review. Let's not just treat this as a one-off. We have to ensure our airline is a place where everyone, employees and passengers, is treated fairly, and I intend to address Miss Reynolds personally, immediately. A few hours later, Monica was called into a conference room. She arrived pale-faced and looked as though she hadn't slept in days. Kevin sat at the head of a long table, flanked by the HR director and a representative from the union that supported flight attendants. Monica took a seat, eyes downcast. Kevin began softly, Miss Reynolds, you're here because of the incident involving me, but I'm not here for vengeance. I'm here to understand why you did what you did and how we can prevent it from happening again. Monica swallowed hard. She fiddled with the pen in her hand, unable to make eye contact. Sir, I made a terrible mistake. I thought you were lying about your ticket. I've seen so many passengers trying to sneak into first class. I got carried away. I'm so sorry. Kevin remained poised. One might argue you singled me out because of my race. Care to comment on that? Monica glanced at the union rep, who gave a subtle nod for her to speak. It wasn't about race, she insisted, though her voice lacked confidence. I was just following protocol. Protocol doesn't include tearing up tickets, Kevin pointed out. Protocol doesn't include disrespecting customers. So let's not hide behind that word. If we're to move forward, honesty is paramount. Monica's lips trembled. She looked as though she might burst into tears. The HR director passed her a box of tissues. The tension in the room was electric, but this was only the start of the reckoning. The union representative tried to advocate for leniency. Monica has been a dedicated employee for 8 years. She's consistently taken on extra shifts and served during peak holiday seasons. We believe this was a lapse in judgment under extreme stress. We'd hate to lose a valuable flight attendant. Kevin shifted in his seat, taking a moment to consider. I'm not eager to terminate employees arbitrarily, especially if we can address underlying issues through training and a culture shift. However, we have zero tolerance for blatant disrespect and potential discrimination. This is not an isolated error, Miss Reynolds. The complaints in your record suggest a pattern. Monica finally raised her eyes. I know I've had complaints, sir, but I never intended to target people because of their race. It's just, I get overwhelmed. People try to push past policies. It feels like I'm always fighting with them. That's understandable, Kevin said, but there's a difference between enforcing rules and humiliating customers. At the end of this meeting, HR will give you a formal disciplinary action. Whether you remain employed here will depend on your willingness to adhere to strict retraining and show genuine behavioral change. Tears pooled in Monica's eyes. She managed a quiet, "Yes, sir," as the weight of her actions finally sank in. Monica left the room with a written reprimand and mandatory enrollment in an intensive customer service and sensitivity training program. She was also placed under a probationary period, meaning any further infraction could lead to immediate termination. While some might consider this a slap on the wrist, it was still a significant consequence for someone who had once prided herself on being a model employee. After Monica's departure, Kevin dismissed the union representative and turned to the HR director. Now, about the broader changes, he began. They discussed ideas for a corporate-wide overhaul. 1. Revised training programs, emphasis on empathy, conflict resolution, and anti-discrimination. 2. Anonymous reporting system, a tool for employees and passengers to report misconduct without fear of retaliation. 3. Periodic audits, surprise check-ins at gates to observe staff-customer interactions. 4. Management accountability. Supervisors would be held responsible for repeated customer service failures under their watch. Kevin's vision was clear. He wanted a culture where employees were both empowered and guided to treat every passenger with dignity. The HR director nodded, taking detailed notes, and agreed to form a cross-department task force to implement these plans. By the end of that day, Kevin felt a surge of purpose. This airline was at a crossroads, and he intended to steer it toward excellence, one that took care of customers and fostered respect among employees at every level. News about the disciplinary action spread quickly through the airline grapevine. Some employees sympathized with Monica, believing she was merely doing her job under pressure. Others applauded Kevin's decision, relieved that someone was finally cracking down on rude or discriminatory behavior. During a scheduled all-staff broadcast, Kevin addressed the entire airline workforce for the first time as CEO. In a measured but firm speech, he reiterated the core values he intended to champion. "We will become the standard for excellent customer service," he declared. "We will foster a culture where every employee and passenger feels valued and respected." He didn't mention Monica by name, but everyone knew the subtext. He spoke of accountability, empathy, and teamwork. He closed by encouraging employees to voice concerns and suggestions. "We're all in this together," he said. "We must hold each other to the highest standards." As the broadcast ended, employees across the network, pilots, flight attendants, ground crew, call center operators buzzed with reactions. Some remained skeptical, viewing Kevin's speech as just another corporate promise. Others felt energized, seeing in Kevin a leader who wouldn't hesitate to confront uncomfortable truths. For Kevin, this moment was merely a starting point. A single speech couldn't fix deep-rooted issues, but it could set the tone for the hard work ahead. Over the next few weeks, the newly formed cross-department task force got to work. They planned a series of workshops, scoured employee feedback, and reviewed passenger complaint histories. Kevin remained actively involved, attending weekly briefings and occasionally dropping in on training sessions to observe. Meanwhile, Monica Reynolds began her mandated sensitivity training. She approached it grudgingly at first, but as the weeks passed, something began to shift. The sessions delved into unconscious bias, conflict de-escalation, and the history of civil rights in America, especially relevant in an industry that serves a global and diverse customer base. Monica found herself reflecting on her past interactions, not just at work, but in her personal life as well. One day after class, she lingered to speak with the instructor, a retired flight attendant who now specialized in emotional intelligence training. "I'm realizing," Monica confessed quietly, "that I've been dealing with my own stress and insecurities by lashing out at passengers." The instructor nodded sympathetically. "It's a start to recognize it. The real question is, what are you going to do about it?" Monica didn't have an immediate answer, but for the first time, she felt a seed of willingness to change. Perhaps this wasn't just about saving her job, it was about becoming a better person altogether. Meanwhile, Kevin received encouraging news from various departments. A pilot, who had long felt overlooked, emailed Kevin directly to praise the new atmosphere of openness. A gate agent in Los Angeles reported that her team had started a weekly customer empathy huddle to discuss best practices. Even the HR department noticed a slight dip in the number of heated passenger complaints. The changes were small, but they signaled progress. Still, challenges abounded. The airline was also facing an operational crunch due to rising fuel costs and stiff competition. Some board members worried that Kevin's focus on culture detracted from immediate financial concerns. In response, Kevin argued that a strong, respectful culture wasn't just good ethics, it was good business. Happier employees mean better customer experiences, leading to more repeat business and positive word of mouth. During a board meeting, a senior board member asked, "Kevin, how do we justify the expense of all this extra training and auditing when we're trying to cut costs?" Kevin stood firm. "We can't afford not to invest in it. The cost of losing a customer due to poor service or the potential lawsuits from a discrimination case can far exceed our training budget. Moreover, a tarnished reputation can be a death sentence in the hyper-competitive airline industry." The board member nodded, seemingly convinced. The rest of the board, while cautious, gave Kevin the green light to continue with his initiatives. With that, Kevin felt a renewed sense of validation. He was on the right path, even if it was a rocky one. As the airline's transformation took shape, Kevin's day-to-day duties expanded beyond operational oversight and executive decisions. He became a figure of both admiration and scrutiny. Employees who had never spoken to a CEO before now found him approachable. He'd often walk through terminals unannounced, chatting with gate agents, baggage handlers, and security staff. It was a hands-on management style that some long-timers had never witnessed in their careers. One afternoon, Kevin visited a flight attendant training facility. He wanted to observe a role-playing session that simulated difficult passenger scenarios. To his surprise, Monica was there, seated quietly in the back of the room, taking notes. Their eyes met briefly. Monica gave a tentative smile, a silent acknowledgement that she was making an effort. After the session, the instructor called for a short break. Monica stood and made her way toward Kevin. She cleared her throat. "Sir, may I speak with you?" Kevin nodded. Of course, she looked down, then back up at him. "I just wanted to apologize again, face to face. I was out of line, and I realize how my actions could have harmed not just you, but the entire airline's reputation." Kevin gave a small, understanding nod. "I appreciate that, Monica. I'm glad you're here, putting in the work to improve." In that moment, Kevin sensed genuine remorse and a desire to change. It was a small but powerful reminder that even the harshest critics and offenders in an organization could evolve if given the right structure and guidance. A few days later, the airline hosted a grand press conference to announce several new initiatives for better passenger experience and fair treatment policies. Journalists from major networks like CNN, CNBC, and local Atlanta stations gathered at a large event hall near the corporate headquarters. Kevin took the stage, flanked by the heads of HR, diversity and inclusion, and marketing. He spoke about the airline's renewed commitment to excellence. "We're here to publicly affirm that every customer and every employee deserves respect," he said. Effective immediately, we are rolling out a series of enhanced training programs, anonymous reporting tools, and a streamlined complaint resolution process. The press conference also highlighted the airline's broader strategy: upgraded in-flight amenities, improved on-time performance metrics, and a pledge to reduce carbon emissions. But the heart of the announcement was the airline's pledge to rebuild trust with customers. Later, a journalist cornered Kevin with a pointed question. "Mr. Marshall, rumors suggest that this cultural shift is prompted by an incident where a flight attendant reportedly tore up your ticket. Care to comment on that?" Kevin smiled diplomatically. That incident did highlight areas for improvement, but this transformation goes beyond one situation. It's about creating an environment where such incidents won't happen in the first place. And if they do, they're swiftly and fairly addressed. A flurry of camera flashes followed. Kevin's calm, assertive demeanor gave the airline a much-needed PR boost. Yet the real work, he knew, would continue long after the reporters had filed their stories. As the weeks turned into months, the airline gradually rolled out its new customer service ethos. Training modules became mandatory for every employee, not just flight attendants. Supervisors underwent specialized courses on leadership and emotional intelligence. Each department received guidelines to maintain a consistent tone of respect and courtesy across the board. Customer feedback started rolling in, and there was a noticeable uptick in positive reviews, particularly praising ground staff and flight attendants for kindness and professionalism. The airline's social media channels, once filled with complaints about lost baggage and rude service, now began showcasing messages of gratitude and surprise at the improved experience. Of course, not everything was perfect. There were still occasional slip-ups, delayed flights, baggage mishaps, and a few rude employees who hadn't fully embraced the new culture. But each incident was handled more transparently, with faster resolution and clear communication. This transparency started to build trust with passengers who appreciated the honesty and the effort to make things right. Kevin also expanded the airline's philanthropic endeavors. He launched a scholarship program for underrepresented youth aspiring to careers in aviation. This further cemented his image as a leader who genuinely cared about diversity and inclusion. Behind the scenes, Monica completed her training program. She was allowed back on active duty, but placed en routes under closer supervision. While some co-workers eyed her cautiously, many were willing to give her a second chance. Monica herself was determined to prove that she could indeed change. One day, Monica found herself assigned to a high-profile flight, a direct route from Atlanta to London, often frequented by international business travelers. Among the passengers was none other than Kevin Marshall, traveling for a summit on global airline alliances. When Monica saw Kevin's name on the manifest, she felt a jolt of nerves. Could she handle this gracefully? Before boarding, she took a deep breath, reminded herself of her new training, and prepared the cabin. As Kevin stepped into the aircraft, Monica greeted him with a polite smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Marshall." Kevin returned the smile. "Good to see you, Monica. How are you?" She nodded, a calm confidence in her voice. "Doing well, sir. I'm here to make sure you have a comfortable flight." Throughout the journey, Monica demonstrated impeccable professionalism, patiently assisting passengers, resolving minor seat disputes, and even calming down a nervous flyer. Kevin observed her quietly. There was a marked difference in her demeanor. Gone was the tense, combative stance. Instead, she exhibited a genuine willingness to help. When the plane touched down in London, Kevin thanked her personally. "I appreciate the excellent service, Monica. Keep it up." For Monica, those words felt like redemption. She had come full circle, learning from her mistakes and emerging stronger. It was a testament to the airline's evolving culture and a glimpse of how second chances could shape better futures. Back in Atlanta, the airline's leadership team took stock of the last few months. Financial reports showed a subtle but promising improvement in revenue and repeat business. Customer satisfaction scores were trending upward. In an industry often plagued by razor-thin profit margins and fierce competition, even a small positive shift was notable. Kevin sat in his office, reviewing the quarterly metrics. A knock on the door drew his attention. Angela Klein stepped in, carrying a file of survey results. "We've had a 15% decrease in customer service complaints," she reported with a hint of pride, "and a 20% increase in commendations, citing friendly, helpful staff." Kevin nodded, a satisfied smile crossing his face. "That's good news. Any updates on Monica?" Angela handed him another file. "She's been performing exceptionally well since returning to duty. Passengers are leaving positive feedback. She's like a different person." Kevin leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the journey. From the day Monica tore up his ticket driven by prejudice or stress, to this moment where she'd become a model employee for the airline's new culture. It was a stark reminder that transformation is possible, both for individuals and entire organizations. Let's keep the momentum going, Kevin concluded. This is just the beginning. The airline's turnaround story soon became the talk of aviation circles. Competitors took note of the improved customer service rankings and began to wonder what Kevin's secret sauce was. Industry analysts praised the airline's comprehensive approach to cultural reform, from top-level leadership down to frontline workers. Monica, for her part, continued to flourish. She applied to become a lead flight attendant, a role that involved mentoring newer employees and ensuring service standards were met. Surprisingly, she was accepted. In her first week as a lead, Monica pulled aside a young trainee who seemed overwhelmed. Instead of snapping at the trainee, Monica calmly walked them through best practices for seat assignments and passenger interactions. It was a small but poignant demonstration of how much she'd grown. One evening, Kevin hosted a celebratory dinner for key staff members, including Angela Klein, Victor Collins, the HR director, and even Monica. They gathered at a swanky restaurant in downtown Atlanta to reflect on the airline's progress. Between bites of gourmet cuisine, the group reminisced about the rocky start, how an unassuming CEO had his boarding pass ripped up at gate A22, and how that single act had catalyzed a massive overhaul in culture. Kevin raised his glass to second chances, accountability, and the power of a single moment to change everything. The group toasted, their glasses clinking in harmonious accord. A wave of warmth and camaraderie filled the room. The airline still had challenges ahead, but they had proven that a toxic moment could spark the seeds of transformation. In that sense, perhaps they owed a strange debt to the very incident they had all worked so hard to move beyond. And that, dear viewers, is how a single ripped-up boarding pass sparked a sea of change across an entire airline, transforming a culture marred by stress and prejudice into one driven by respect and empathy. Kevin Marshall's calm resolve as the company's CEO not only exposed the flaws in customer service, but also illuminated how we can turn moments of injustice into opportunities for profound growth. Whether you're an employee, a passenger, or a casual observer, this story reminds us that every interaction matters. A single act of disrespect can unravel trust, but a single act of accountability and sincere effort can rebuild it even stronger. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about how we treat each other, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Spread the word, and let's continue to champion respect in every corner of our world. Safe travels, everyone.